Another problem we looked at today was the bookshelf. So, in this problem, a little bit different constructor. Really, the only thing the constructor was asked to do was to just initialize the array. So, the array is now a book. It's not a rectangle. So, it's an array of books. Num books represents how many books go in there, but there's no other information given. So, we don't want to go start putting books in. We don't know any things about them. There's really only one book constructor, and it requires an integer page count and a string author name. We don't have any of that stuff available to us here. So the constructor's purpose is done. There's actually a separate method called add book, which that's where you're going to actually put books into the array. And if you look at how the main method function, what it did was it put the books in. So it went ahead through sort of a loop process and started calling on this add book method books in. It did that after the creation of the bookshelf object. So the bookshelf object shows up, and then at the beginning, it's got space to hold books. Okay, maybe it can hold 10 books or five or whatever. But then the actual books are being put in through the add book method. So the add book method wants you to reference the array, in this case, bookshelf. It's given an index as to where this object goes. And the trick is this array can only accept books. We don't have a book yet. So if you wanted to, you could do it all at once, or you could do this over two lines of code. You could say, like, okay, I'm going to make a book. Like we saw a minute ago, a book takes an integer, which is the page count, and a string, which is the author name. And if you notice, two parameters available to this method were int page count, string, author name. Now we've got a book. Now we can put it into the array. I could have done that all at once and just said bookshelf index equals new book. Okay. Well, now that I've got some books in there, let's see if we do. Then we can start doing things with the array. So, for example, every book has a page count: 256 pages, 188 pages, 302, and so on. With those page counts, right, we could collect the total number of pages of all the books on the bookshelf. So this is, in its essence, basically like a sum method, right? We're going to go to each book individually, and we're going to get the page count and add it to the sum, and then later return it. So this is a great chance to use an enhanced loop, like give me a book from the bookshelf, okay? And when you do that, I will just add to the sum the number of pages in it. I'm going to have to familiarize myself a little bit with this book class. I see a few different methods in here. This looks like the one that I want. Get page count. Okay, so if I could get the page count, oops, tab, then I could go ahead, take my book reference, ask for its particular page count, and add that on top of this. I believe the answer was a little bit over 2,000, and we'll see if we're just close. All right, yeah, 2313. That's correct. Get longest book by index. We can see right here the longest book is the one by Laura Hillenbrand at 657 pages. It appears that the index of it is 3, so I'll just keep that in mind. I'm looking to get 3, but I want to be able to solve this for anything. Okay, so I'm going to track the index. Typically, we assume the index is at 0, just kind of like a safe way of not going out of bounds. Later, we'll return the index, but in the middle, we have to give every index that belongs to the array a chance to be labeled as the one that leads us to the longest book. Okay, so to do that, we'll loop to all of the other indexes, starting with 1 or 0, it doesn't matter too much, all the way across the bookshelf. And what we're going to do, very similar to some methods we've written previously, is we're going to take a book from the bookshelf at this new index I, and we're going to ask for its page count. And if its page count is, oops, okay, I wanted to say greater than, we're going to go back to the bookshelf. This time we're going to go to what I call the index, or you could call it something else. We're going to get that page count. And if it is, in fact, larger, then that means that my index is wrong. My index wasn't taking me to the longest book like I had thought it was. So I'm going to change out that index for the new index that we just located. At the end, if everybody gets a chance, then we should be left with the biggest one. And like I said, we're expecting to get three, because we could kind of see for ourselves that was the one. Okay. Like we saw yesterday, it's actually real easy to turn this code into a longest book. But what I could do, okay, is I could do all the same steps. But if I knew the index, then I would give back the book found at that index. The array holds book references. So if I know where it is, like you can just imagine standing in front of a bookshelf. If I said, "Get me the longest book," oh, by the way, it's the seventh one from the left. You wouldn't need to know anything else. You could count in like zero, one, two, three, four, whatever, and you could just grab that book. So in the first one, we were just saying where it was. Like, oh, look at my bookshelf. The longest book is the fifth one, five. In this case, we're saying the longest book, okay, is this one here. In this case, it's the Laura Hildenbrand book. Maybe it's Seabiscuit or whatever, and it's 657 pages. Okay, but we're talking about the actual book. Like now, you're going into the array and getting the book. Steps are still the same. Like go to every one, give it a chance. But what we return is a little bit different. So the return type of the method is always crucial. And this was, hopefully emphasizing that fact for you. Okay, the last one, all author initials. This is a little weird. You probably had to read the directions a few times to really grasp it. But the idea is we're going to build a string that has the initials in order from every author. So, like first up, I would get WC from Willa Cather, EL from Elmore Leonard, SL from Sinclair Lewis, and so on. And once I had all of those initials, okay, I put them all together in like a big string. So WC, EL, SL, and so on. And there's going to be spaces in between them. Now, the trick is that the author's names are held in a single string called author names. They don't have like a first and a last. There's not like two variables. But we're promised that there's always going to be a space between their first and last names. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make an enhanced loop here that goes across the entire bookshelf, taking one book at a time. For every book, there's a method that we can call that's get author name. So if you have a book and you call this method, you'll get back a string, okay, that represents the author's name. And so what we could do is like maybe make a string out of it, take the book, get the author name. Now we've got a string representation of their name. I'm really interested in where is the space character. So if you gave me the name, I could ask for the index of the space. Okay, the directions promise us that there's going to be one. And if I knew where the space was, now I could make two substrings out of it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the name. I'm going to substring it. The first one's easy. I just go 0, 1. Now I've got their first letter. The second one's where we got to get a little bit more creative. We got to go to just to the right of where that space character was. And then we're going to go one more index to the right of that. So, like for Willa Cather, that should grab the C. The C was like one index to the right of where that space was. I'm going to put one more space in. The directions said to do this. They said to put spaces between the initial pairs. And then when I'm done, I'm going to return my build string. And I'm hoping that it went through and grabbed all those different letter combinations. So let's see if it did. WC for Willa Cather, EL for Elmore Leonard, all the way down to JK for John Krakauer. So yeah, good. All right. Yeah, let me know if you have any more questions.